We're going to focus on the main protagonists. Before we do for the Premier League, I was looking back at the odds for last season, and the title favourites finished third, the second favourites finished second, and the third favourites won the Premier League. The title favourites were Manchester City, second favourites were Arsenal, and third favourites were Liverpool. Okay, James, this season the favourites are Liverpool, the second favourites are Arsenal, the third favourites are Manchester City. So, I know we'll get our predictions individually. Do you think we might get a role reversal 12 months after we got a role reversal of the odds for last season?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of this hinges on Liverpool, doesn't it? Because obviously they won the title last year. They were the best team, but they've also had to go through something of a rebuild. And I think a lot of the questions that we asked about Arne Slot inheriting Liverpool from Jurgen Klopp last summer, it ended up not really applying because, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to Arne Slot as well, because he did a fantastic job almost by, just tweaking things here and there, but allowing that team to grow almost in the mold that it had done under Jurgen Klopp, albeit with one or two tweaks. Whereas this summer, we've obviously seen them invest heavily in the market. We don't think they're done. They look a little different, or a little more different than they did last season. And Slot's kind of having more of an influence on the way they play. And I think he's already spoken about how they're going to have to adapt their style to the new players that they have. So really, the questions around Liverpool are 12 months on now valid. Can Arne Slot really impose himself on this team properly, really take them and mould them in his own image? Of course, he does so from a great position of strength because they've won the league. He's exceeded all expectations. He's done a fantastic job there so far. But we're in this sort of slightly unusual position of the favourites and last season's champions having strengthened, and yet there's quite a lot we don't really know about them going into the new season. It all hinges on that, really.
And as a Newcastle fan, Don Hutchison, a month ago you were thinking what a season this could be to build on last season. Now you wonder if your best player might never play for your team again and will sign for Liverpool before the transfer window. What are you hearing with regards to Alexander Isak and when the transfer window closes, where he'll be playing his football?
It's a difficult one because from what I'm hearing is Newcastle will not sell. They've told Liverpool the number, which is quite close to £140 million. I think Liverpool have gone in with a really low ball offer at 110, and that's Newcastle not entertaining any sort of number if it's not close to 140. So he's got 3 years left on his contract to 2028. So they're in a position of strength. At the same time, where they are a little bit weak, here comes the contradiction where Eddie Howe needs two strikers. He's lost Callum Wilson. And as it stands, he's lost his best striker and one of the best in the world in Alexander Isak. So he needs two bodies through the door before he even entertains selling the star man. He's the one I feel sorry for. The Newcastle fans will drop Alexander Isak within 5 minutes. There's a reason why they sing for Alan Shearer. There's a reason why they sing for Kevin Keegan. There's even a reason why they sing for Andy Cole, who was sensational with Peter Beardsley in the spell he was at Newcastle, and he left for Man United. They still sing Andy Cole's name. The way Isak and his agent have gone about this is absolutely disgusting, in my opinion. I mean, saying you'll never play for the club again, trying to hold the club to ransom, down in tools and coming back from the pre-season tour and, not even training with the first team. Eddie Howe, he can't do anymore. I think he's handled it as good as he could. That's what you have to do. You can't just say, right, you can train with us, and it would come across a little bit weak. So he's got rid of him in terms of the training times. It's still very much up in the air because if Newcastle sign Wissa from Brentford and another, it was rumoured to be Šeško, then I would imagine the deal would have got done. But as you said, it's bizarre how football works because I sat here 3 weeks ago with no talk of Isak going, and I genuinely thought when Newcastle put that bid in for Hugo Ekitike, I genuinely thought, hand on heart, they could compete with the top three. And I'm sincere about that. The best midfield in the country, I think, because they complement each other really well. On top of Anthony Gordon, the new signings of Anthony Elanga, Isak and Ekitike, Harvey Barnes, etc., etc. It was looking really promising, and Liverpool have just absolutely decimated what Newcastle have been trying to build in this summer. Taking away Ekitike and trying to take away Alexander Isak. They nearly took away Anthony Gordon 6 months ago. So it leaves Newcastle, scratching around to this Villa game of the weekend, which is a hard place when you've got a fully fit squad to try and go and get a result. So I would imagine the morale is quite low. The pre-season results would tell you that. They've not been great in pre-season. So I think the saga just needs to end. Someone's got to come out and say, and put a flag in the sand and say, right, he's going to go or he's staying. That's what needs to happen, because the fans are left in the lurch. But as I said, it's Eddie Howe and the players I feel sorry for.
James, would Isak be the final piece of the Liverpool jigsaw? Or with the speculation that we're reading about this week on ESPN FC about Mark Gahey and Liverpool potentially coming in for him, although that's probably now looking likely it might be next summer, do you still think they need to do some work, even if they get Alexander Isak?
Well, they are short at centre-back. I know that they're obviously making moves in that area. It's pretty clear they've identified Mark Gahey as the one who they think, I guess, would be the sort of first reserve, if you like, in that position. And he would certainly, his pedigree would more than suit that role. I mean, look, you do sort of feel as though Isak's one of those kind of game-changing signings, really, that if they do get him through the door, on paper, they are by some distance, you would say, the strongest, certainly 11 and maybe 15 or 16 in the league. And but the game's not played on paper. The game is played with, you need that chemistry and that understanding. And one of the things of this, of course, if it does run late into the window and they do get him over the line, he won't have had a proper pre-season. He's not trained with the first team. He's not trained with Newcastle. He's been training on his own. So you'd imagine that he's going to need some time to get himself up to speed. And the only other thing I'd say about Isak is that Newcastle have used him very cleverly in terms of, he's had a very checkered fitness record, and they've been able to kind of not necessarily rotate him, but just manage his fitness quite well. And I think if you're going to pay 140 odd million pounds for a centre forward, you would expect him to start every single week and 3 times a week, perhaps in the Champions League as well, when that is going. And that is a bit of a doubt about Isak, whether he can actually do that. And I wonder whether they've looked at Ekitike and Isak and thought, well, okay, when people say, oh, why would you sign Ekitike if you're going to go and get Isak? I think that might be the reason, that they might feel actually they need to probably rotate him, as silly as it might sound for a player who could be that expensive. But I do think if they get Isak over the line, he's been a fantastic striker for Newcastle. The whole world and his wife wanted to sign him. Arsenal, I think, would have really gone for him if they felt he was available. So, it does. They're clear favourites probably already. I think if they get Isak, they're even further clear.
Second favourites, Dawn, are Arsenal. Now they've strengthened. They've added some good players as well. Zubimendi, 70 million from Real Sociedad. Gyökeres, 66 million from Sporting. Madueke, 56 million from Chelsea. And even Christian Norgard's a good addition from Brentford. Arsene Wenger finished second 3 times. After that, he won the title. Can Mikel Arteta do the same?
Could do. I think you're looking at a season where it's going to be a season of margins. Arsenal were very unlucky last year with the amount of injuries that they had. You have to try and remember, they were playing some really good football and really confident football, and looking like most weeks at the very start and middle part of the season, they could turn anyone over. It was the fact that the injuries decimated them. It happens to everyone. It happened to Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp when all the centre-backs got injured, and that has a knock-on effect. But they can do. And there's always context to how a manager does, I think. People are sort of, in my opinion, people are very quick to turn around and go, well, 6 year, he has to win a title. Well, only one team can win that title. And when you're going for a Champions League on top of domestic football, there's always context to how Mikel Arteta does. If he had a brilliant race in the Premier League and lost out by a point or two, and he got in a Champions League final or won the Champions League, you can't then say, well, he hasn't won a Premier League. I mean, you can, don't get me wrong, I say that very loosely, but you wouldn't criticise him, because you feel as though, even though 5-6 years feels like a long time in football, they are building from where they've come from. And on top of the Isak going to Liverpool, they're up against some teams that have got some serious firepower. Chelsea, I think, have signed brilliantly in João Pedro. I think he's going to be an amazing signing for them. That's the one, as a Newcastle fan, I would have took him well before Benjamin Šeško. So I wasn't that worried when Šeško didn't sign and go to Man United, because they need that centre forward like Isak that can come short and link the play. But from Arsenal, what they've done is they've got strength in Max Dowman, who's only 15. They've got Nwaneri, they've got Bukayo Saka. So the youth is still there. They're starting to add goals. We've sat here and said forever they need a top-class number 9. Well, I think he was a little bit stubborn, Mikel Arteta, and he thought he could win the league without one. Now he's went and got one. He's got a proven one. So now let's see what they've got. This might be the season where it tests their bottle, it tests their nerve. and it tests their quality. So let's see how they do. But I wouldn't write them out the title race. I think Liverpool are favourites, don't get me wrong. But as I said before, it's margined in this game, and anything can happen in terms of injuries. And what Liverpool had, I mean, yeah, they had 3 or 4 injuries at the tail end of the season and the latter part, but they still got through it. Arsenal need a clear run, and with fair wind, they could have a title charge.
James, I've lost count of the number of times over the past 3 or 4 years on ESPN FC Live, whether it's been you and Don or whoever it's been, we've discussed Arsenal. Why aren't they signing a striker? We can't say that anymore. They've signed a striker. They got 69 goals last season. Does this automatically mean they're going to get more goals? And if it doesn't, who scored the goals last season that Gyökeres is going to take goals away from this season?
Well, the key to Gyökeres' success is going to be whether they can adapt their style to suit his game. And a lot of the talk around the pre-season tour that I was on with them in Asia was about this idea that they're going to try and play a little bit more direct. They're going to try and get the ball forward earlier into those attacking positions because they recognise that Gyökeres is not somebody who's going to come deep and link the play. He's somebody who needs to play in between the 2 centre halves on the shoulder and get in behind. And for Arsenal to be able to do that effectively, they need to get the ball sort of forward quicker, and be able to exploit that space in behind. Where the challenge is going to come for Arsenal is that a lot of their home games are basically where teams come and play 5 at the back, 2 banks of 4, and sort of sit on the edge of their own box and try and break them down. So getting the ball forward quicker is going to be almost irrelevant, really, because there's no space in behind. You're going to have to move it quicker in those attacking positions. And that's where I think someone like Zubimendi will probably come into play a little bit more, someone who can orchestrate games, who can kind of dictate the tempo of matches. And the link up between those two, I think it was significant. I thought that Zubimendi cross Gyökeres header for his first goal at the Emirates last weekend in the friendly. I think that's what they're hoping to see a lot more of. But that idea of getting the ball forward quicker and just the tweak in their system, how effectively they can do that, because one of the criticisms, of course, of Arsenal is that they've been a little bit too static, that they play with that sort of horseshoe, where they control the game and they move it right to left, left to right, and then they're not really able to open teams up enough. Well, I'm not sure Gyökeres by himself solves that issue unless you are able to just change your style a little bit and be a little bit more unpredictable in the way that you use the ball. So that's why Zubimendi is such an important signing for them as well. It's almost as if Zubimendi is the key to Gyökeres to some extent. But they drew 14 games last season. That's the problem. They drew 14 games. It's too many. And they found themselves knocking heads against that problem of being able to open teams up and then take the chances when they create them.
I think you make a great point. James, I think you make a great point in terms of, I think we're seeing stylistically now over the last, and it might sort of carry on, a spate of centre forwards that come and link the play, which make the team better. We see that with João Pedro. You'll see that with Ekitike or Alexander Isak. The ones that have sort of semi-struggled, and Gyökeres comes into the bracket of Darwin Núñez when you build a profile of player. What does Darwin Núñez, what does Gyökeres want in terms of balls into his feet? Yeah, he can handle them, but it's not his strength. He wants balls placed down the side. You think of Erling Haaland. Well, if you have defensively lots of bodies either behind him or 2 6s in front of him, you can stop that service. So unless you're playing away from home, that's why I think Darwin Núñez, apart from a confidence thing, and by the way, I'm still stunned that Newcastle didn't take Darwin Núñez because I think there's a player in there. But in terms of the new centre forward, now you think of Harry Kane years ago and still doing it today, got the ability to come short, link the play. Firmino's the best example at Liverpool where he comes short, very reliable in terms of getting the ball to his feet. Mane scored goals, Salah scored goals, Wijnaldum scored goals, all off the back of a number 9 that was reliable and coming short. That's going to be the test now for Arsenal because Gyökeres, even though he can handle the ball coming short, his main strength is getting down the sides of centre-backs and racing away from them because he is quick, he is powerful, and he can finish. So how they sort of adapt his style to the other boys that I mentioned where they're coming short, linking the play and getting goals for other people, it's going to be very interesting to see how Arsenal sort of manufacture that style early on.
Yeah, I'm glad James mentioned Zubimendi. Commentated on him a lot in La Liga with Real Sociedad, and we thought he might be in the Premier League 12 months ago, but decided to stay for one more year, and he could be the one who not just unlocks Gyökeres, but also allows Declan Rice to play that little bit further forward. and that could be something that Arsenal can exploit this season. Now, if history repeats itself, the third favourites from last year winning the title, that was Liverpool. The third favourites this year, James, are Manchester City. Now, Rodri will come back. He'll not be ready for the start of the season. They've added Reinders, who was brilliant at AC Milan. They've added Ait Nouri. They've added Cherki as well. Yes, they've lost Kevin De Bruyne, which is a blow, but it wasn't the Kevin De Bruyne of 3-4 years ago. They'll be quite happy, won't they, that most people are kind of letting them go under the radar ahead of this title challenge, because Pep will be desperate to make amends for last year.
Yeah, they will. I mean, they don't go into this season with the same sense of expectation sort of surrounding them, perhaps because of last year, but they have spent a significant amount of money. I mean, look, I do think we have to, the starting point for this Manchester City chat is the fact that they're able to start this season without knowing what the outcome of the hearing is into the 115 charges. I mean, it is frankly ludicrous that we're in this position, that we're going into another campaign where they don't know the outcome, we don't know the outcome. And it does cast a bit of a shadow over Manchester City and the whole league, really, that we're still in this position where we just don't know what's going to happen and how badly they're going to be punished. I think they've spent heavily in the market. I mean, I don't have particular insight into this, but it does. You could see how they've spent heavily in the market, not just because of last season, but because they may also be fearing what's coming down the track if there was a transfer ban or if there were a heavy points deduction or some sort of sanction that might make them a less appealing club. They sort of think, well, let's get those players in the door now and let's sort of create that siege mentality and get them integrated into the group, and then whatever comes along. I mean, I'm sort of interested to kind of see exactly how they go about it, because, you know, there's been a lot of chat about Donnarumma coming in, and that adds to the conversation of, you sort of look at him and think he's not really a Pep Guardiola goalkeeper. I mean, right when he came in, he kind of bombed out a really good shot stopper and someone who wasn't particularly good with their feet in Joe Hart. I'm not saying that I think Donnarumma is a lot better goalkeeper than Joe Hart was, but that idea that my goalkeeper has to be able to play out from the back with the ball at his feet. Well, if you're going after Donnarumma, I'm not sure I really see that with him. Does that indicate perhaps that they're going to maybe try and be a little bit more direct, that maybe there's going to be a slightly different way that they're going to play? And again, similarly to what we were talking about with Arsenal and also Liverpool, I mean, they've signed quite, not just, they haven't really bolstered the squad so much as they've changed the starting lineup quite significantly. And that will take some time to feel it out, you know, and there was a sense of kind of positivity and a bit of momentum about them at the Club World Cup. And then, of course, they crashed out much earlier than everybody anticipated. And that's just created this little uncertainty again. So, you know, we're going to have to sort of see the first sort of 2 or 3 games about exactly how effective they are with these new players. And they're going to need a lot of them to hit the ground running, and especially because they don't have Rodri there to stitch it all together.
Don, for 2 or 3 years, it's been a 3-horse race for the title, either Manchester City, either Liverpool or Arsenal. Do we now have a 4-horse race for the title? Because Enzo Maresca has certainly found something with Chelsea and Club World Cup. That's going to be interesting to see with the lack of preparation for the new season that's going to happen after the Club World Cup. But is this now a 4-horse race for the Premier League title that includes Chelsea?
I think early on, yeah, but I think they'll fade away.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think when you look at Chelsea last season, they're the youngest team and youngest squad in the Premier League. And it was a little bit of an unknown quantity and unknown how they were going to sort of compete and compare in the long term. I think they've improved in terms of their signings. I think João Pedro is going to be an amazing signing for them. I worry about Levi Colwill, he's got a really bad injury. I still worry about their number one. I still worry defensively. Can they cope? They're building a fantastic squad in terms of wide players, midfield players, and strikers. It's just I'm not convinced yet, and it's not a dig at Chelsea. It's just because the teams they're competing with feel like to me that they're that little bit further down the road. I think Liverpool are further down the road. Arsenal and Man City. The Man City one is very interesting because they're a really unknown. You know, when you look at the signings like Cherki and Reinders, fantastic players. Ait Nouri is not a defender; he's a wing back. So defensively, it's going to be interesting to see how they cope. But I think Chelsea are going places. I think they're strengthening. I think they're looking good. I'd like to try and see them buy that Frank Leboeuf or that Desai, that really experienced centre-back that's going to marshal them in difficult games, in difficult times. But I think when you look at the work that Maresca and Chelsea have done, I think it's very, very positive. In terms of winning the league, I'd put them in the race early on. At the end of it, I think they'll finish fourth. I don't think they'll be contenders, not because they're not a good side or they're just probably not capable. As I said, I just think the three teams that are competing with them are that further down the road. It'll be it'll be some title win, by the way. If they won the league this year, it'll be off the charts because no one would have. I'd imagine if you're asking any journalists or pundits or anyone to try and predict who's going to win the league, there'll be a 1% that would predict Chelsea. So it'd be amazing if they'd done it. I don't see it.
Well, not many people thought they would win the Club World Cup, though, James, did they, in a tactical mastermind class from Maresca? And look what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the impact of that either. I mean, they were playing competitive football in 30, 35 degree heat until the middle of July. They've had no proper pre-season really to speak of. They've had a training block at Cobham, and away we go again. You know, with the first game obviously tomorrow. So, look, Sunday I think they play, but it's one of those where you just assume that even though they are a young squad, very young squad, as Don says, they've got more strength in depth than they've had now because of the window that they've had. You just have to feel that it's going to catch up with them at some point. Not least because we talk about the young group and maybe having the energy to be able to take this on. But last season in the Conference League, they were able to rotate their entire 11 for the group stage. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to do that this time. They can't give Cole Palmer every midweek off for until the new year. So you're going to be asking this group to have to go 3 times a week, having not really had a pre-season, and as I say, having had that real exertion, that emotional and physical roller coaster of playing for an extra month and winning the Club World Cup. They should be on a high from that, of course, and I'm sure it will give them a lot of confidence. But it is also sort of worth stating that I don't know whether Maresca has entirely put to bed the criticism that he was facing towards the back end of last season. Now, he should have done. He's earned the right to do that because, of course, they qualified for the Champions League, they won the Conference League, and then they won the Club World Cup. But it's easy to forget that at the back end of last season, there was a section of the fan base who'd go to Stamford Bridge and they would start grumbling about the style of play, about whether they were getting the ball forward quickly enough, just what they were watching, was it quite good enough? And again, while they've strengthened in the market and while I think Maresca's sort of emboldened himself and strengthened his own kind of power base, if you like, it's easy to see how 2 or 3 difficult results at the start of the season, players not quite fully tuned up for the challenges that they've got after the pre-season they've had. And those murmurings could start again, and it could start to get a little bit difficult for Maresca. That would be my concern for them. So I think they really need to have a strong start to be able to build on that momentum. And then, as Don will know far better than me, if you're winning every week, they always say you don't feel the tiredness in your legs anyway.